Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Jimmy Dore Show. Special guest Richard Eskow from the Zero Hour is here with us. Hi, Richard.
Hey, Jimmy.
And where can people find your show, Zero Hour?
Patreon.com/The Zero Hour.
All right, fantastic. Now, I'm going to show you a picture of this guy. Guy's name is Evan McMullin. And now he's a Republican. He's a former Central and CIA operations officer. He ran as an independent for president in 2016. He was the guy in Utah. And but he's also the chief policy director for the House Republican Conference. Oh, he has served as the chief policy director for the House Republican Conference in the United States House of Representatives, and as a senior advisor on national security issues for the House Committee on Foreign Affairs. And so there you go. So that's who this guy is. So he goes on the MSNBC show with the Nicole Wallace, right? Because she's from the Bush administration. And where do people from the Bush administration go? MSNBC. That's what. Did Nicole Wallace work? She also worked on the John McCain campaign, correct or no? Do you know?
I think so. I'm not sure. I think so. Probably.
I think she did too, but I'm not sure. But she definitely was Bush White House. So he goes on the show with her, and he starts arguing.
She was a senior advisor for the McCain-Palin campaign.
Yes. Yeah. So this guy goes on and starts talking about. They're talking about Pruitt, who recently resigned as the EPA chief,
right,
and what a criminal this guy was. Just on the face of it, he was such a corrupt criminal. And he started to argue that, the Republicans excuse Pruitt for being a little corrupt because he delivered on certain policy issues at the EPA that are favored by the party as a whole. So they don't care if you're a criminal. If you give them whatever, if you take that regulation away from coal, I own a coal plant. I want that guy, right? So that's what they're saying.
We're not purists here over on the right.
Yeah,
if you can completely ruin the environment, we don't mind if you take a vacation or two.
Or get what was it? He got the tea or whatever the special food was he had got from health food stores. Or I don't even vitamins.
Oh yeah.
Jimmy, I have an opinion on this.
Okay.
Okay, and my opinion about Scott Pruitt and Ben Carson and all these other guys and their accusations of corruption is this. We're taking our eye off the ball, which is the real corruption isn't the shit that Scott Pruitt got fired for. It's the shit that they like.
Yes.
The real corruption is what he's doing for the Koch brothers and the rest of the fossil fuel industry, and that his replacement is going to do for them. And by focusing you know what, Ben Carson, you can have your $31,000 dining room set if you don't throw people on Section 8 out of their homes. How about that?
How about that?
I'll make that deal with you. I'll make that devil's bargain with you. You can have your $31,000 Scott Pruitt. You can have all the private plane trips you want if you don't destroy the environment for our kids. How about that? Because, and I'm not saying it's right, of course, of personal corruption, but I'm just saying, think about the big corruption.
I agree with you. I agree with you. So you're saying you're willing to make a Faustian bargain.
Yeah.
No, you're saying keep your eye on the ball and don't get tripped up making the story about these little things. It should be about the big things. I get it. So
right, because then it's going to be the polite Republicans came back and the one who raped the environment and give cancer to your children and throw poor kids out on the street. But they don't charge $31,000 for a door, so it's okay.
They paid a reasonable price for their ballpoint pens, so
it's
even square now.
Yeah, it's okay. It's how we do things. No, it's not how we do things.
So he said one more. So Evan McMullin said one more thing. He said in Pruitt, you see the same sort of thing. He promised to deliver and did deliver policy changes for the EPA, adding that the trade he was a little corrupt. And that's how a lot of Republicans see Trump. That's what he said before. You see the same sort of thing you see with Trump, that Republicans are willing to go along with all this horribleness and corruption because he's giving them tax cuts and he's doing the environmental damage that they want him to do. And he's doing all the stuff that they want him to do. So they're willing to put up with it. So, and what made me want to talk about this was what Nicole Wallace says here. This is kind of stunning. So he's trying to make the case that, hey, the Republicans we're willing to make a trade to take a corrupt guy because he's doing our bidding. And Nicole Wallace is like, hey, why can't we just have someone who's not corrupt? But she says something else. Let's listen.
13 investigations. He may have committed crimes.
That's right. But the point is just that is the trade that the party
I'm sorry.
is making.
So he says it again. He's starting to say that's the trade that they're willing to make. You're missing the point. Yes, he's investigated. He has 13 investigations. You're missing the point. And so let's hear it again.
13 investigations. He may have committed
That's right.
crimes.
That's right. But the point is just that is the trade that the party
I'm sorry.
is making.
The Republican Party sucks, but you can still find non-criminal Republicans.
Well,
to a
yes,
point.
yeah, absolutely you can.
So there is the former Bush White House press secretary, senior advisor to the McCain campaign, on television saying, not without parsing words, yes, the Republican Party sucks. She just says it. She says they suck. So that's how Nicole Wallace feels about the Republican Party. Imagine how everyone feels about the Democratic Party. At least the Republicans have power. At least they might suck, but they know how to win elections. They've been winning. They have power. They're implementing a lot of horrible right-wing stuff. They get to do that. So that's how someone like her feels about the Republican Party. Yes, the Republican Party sucks. So imagine people how they feel about the Democrats. They're just as corrupted, yet they don't know how to win. They never get to implement any left-wing policies. Even when Barack Obama was president, he didn't implement left-wing policies. He implemented center-right policies, moderate Republican policies. Everything he did was moderate Republican. So my point, so the reason I wanted to bring this up is, and this isn't unique to the Republican Party, so they must all know this. So if Nicole Wallace says this freely on national television, someone who hangs out with all those people, that must be how most of them feel. Most of them who are normal. You know what I mean? Like, not mental. So, I mean, except for like Ted Cruz, like that's what I'm talking about. So do you make anything out of her saying that, Richard?
Well, number one, I think it's good marketing for her. Look at the tag in the corner. She's on MSNBC where saying the Republican Party sucks means you get invited back. That's number one. Number two is she probably does think it sucks. But I was just laughing through that whole exchange because, what Ed McMullin was saying was, yes, they have made a devil's bargain, like the kind that I was describing, except they made it on the side of the devil.
Yeah.
And what she's saying is, we suck, but some of us aren't criminals yet.
Yeah.
That was the totality of her statement, right?
Yeah.
You could still find a few who
that aren't criminals.
crooks, and the Democratic Party is very proud that it has a lower level of criminality, and I suppose it should be, but on the other hand, they're not getting things done. The Republicans control, despite the fact that the Republicans are implementing policies that Americans across the political spectrum hate, including Republican voters, they control all three branches of the federal government. So suck or not suck, corrupt or not corrupt, they're getting stuff done. The Democratic Party isn't getting anything done right now. So the question might be, if they were thinking about it, how do we get stuff done? How do we get in a position to get stuff? What do these guys know that we don't? One of them is they're rigging elections. While Democrats are talking about Russians stealing elections, Republicans are stealing elections all across the country. Why aren't they making that an issue? Start there.
How are they stealing elections?
They're
By voter suppression?
Voter suppression, caging, and all that stuff.
Oh, voter ID, stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, why aren't they talking about that? We know that's true.
I'm with you. So, did you have something?
Well, I was going to say a lot of times when people go, well, at least they're not criminals. They're not. I hate how that is just such a subtle way to uphold the status quo.
Mm-hmm.
Well, at least George W. Bush was a patriot. I think he genuinely cared. At least Barack Obama was. Like, no, our system's broken. The status quo is broken. It needs to be flushed down the toilet. I don't care who you do or don't want to have a beer with. Those days are over.
Nicely put. So I wanted to do this because to point out that the Democrats are just as corrupt. Here's, Menendez in New Jersey, right? So on April 20th, this is from The Intercept, the Senate Ethics Committee severely admonished Senator Menendez, in a public letter of admonition, which detailed that the committee found that over a 6-year period, Menendez knowingly and repeatedly accepted gifts of significant value from Dr. Melgen without obtaining required committee approval. And so they talk about how, in this article, they talk about how corrupt this guy is. And then they talk about how the Democrats didn't give a crap, how Chuck Schumer and all the leadership rallied around him. And then they close the article by saying this. This is how calcified the Democratic Party is. They even unite behind an incumbent who was drowning in sleaze and corruption, who was just severely admonished by the Senate Ethics Committee, whose legal defense was funded by far-right figures, and who has used his senior leadership role to repeatedly join with the Bush-Cheney and right-wing GOP factions against his own party's supposed positions. Not only do they unite behind him, but they ensure that no primary challenge can even happen. They deny their own voters the right to decide if they want Menendez by making it impossible for any such challengers to raise money from funders who rely on the largesse of Democratic office holders and who thus do not want to run afoul of their decreed preferences. It's a party that lacks any vibrancy or movement. It's stilted, stifled, and ossified. They don't even allow primary challenges to rotted incumbents who have oozed a suffocating stench of corruption during almost 3 decades of incumbency in Congress, even if that incumbent has repeatedly blocked the party's own agenda. As was also demonstrated by Hillary Clinton's recent endorsement of the corruption-tainted Andrew Cuomo over his progressive primary challenger Cynthia Nixon, seeking to become New York State's first female governor. All that matters to them is closing ranks around one another, clinging as tightly as they can to their own prerogatives, preventing anyone from disrupting their ability to greedily feed at the corporate-fueled trough, which keeps them fat and satiated. And so the reason I bring this up, nothing has changed because of Trump. Both parties are just as corrupt as ever. They're just as repulsive to the average voter as anybody. You're going to have half the country not show up to vote again. And they don't, and it's just it's a broken system, and nobody is talking about this system. No one is talking about fixing this, except for Bernie Sanders.
Me?
And yeah.
Here's the difference between the Republican and the Democratic Party in this case. Okay, Menendez is corrupt, right? And they close ranks behind him anyway, and it's disgusting to watch. And the Republicans do the same thing. They close ranks around their corrupt people unless they go against the party. And then they flush them down the toilet without a second thought. Democrats do that with a Menendez, even when Menendez is stabbing them in the back, right?
Yes.
Center, Democrat, and by this I mean, powerful Democrats, party leaders, establishment Democrats, don't get offended when their fellows stab them in the back.
Manchin.
Joe Crowley.
Right.
When Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez beat Crowley, Nancy Pelosi's statement about Crowley, about the election, was 3 paragraphs of how great Crowley is. He'd been trying to get rid of her. He'd been trying to unseat her and take her place. She just, and it's like, well, yeah, but I can work with him. It's not, and there was nothing about the young woman who is a hero who took his place. So they're much more comfortable with corrupt people who stab them in the back, apparently, than with people who will actually reinvigorate their party with new voters and new ideas.
Well, you ask, what do the Republicans know that the Democrats don't? I don't think it's a matter of knowing or not knowing anything. I think it's a matter of the Republicans' first priority is winning. That is not the Democrats' first priority.
No.
It is just clearly not their first priority. That's why in Rhode Island they won't support a progressive incumbent. Instead, they'll support some alt-right dude. Their first priority is making the donors happy and maintaining the status quo. And if in the meantime you beat a Republican or two, cool. But you can do that first priority without it.
But the important thing is to keep the corporate money train going.
Mm-hmm.
That really is.
Yep.
It sounds like we're being cynics and all that stuff. This is just, at some point you just have to realize facts. And Nancy Pelosi is not changing one bit. And she even says it. I've played that video where they ask, hey, what do people want to change? She says, no, people don't want to change. Meaning I became a 100 millionaire while I've been in Congress, so everything's working fine for me. And I don't want to blow up the system. They don't want to blow up the system. They want to protect the system. So if they're they are protectors of the system. And what I would like to see is Bernie Sanders try to blow up the system a little bit more instead of trying to prop up the Democratic Party system, which is bullshit. I don't know. How do you feel about that, Richard?
Well, I definitely agree that the system is broken and that our number one priority should be blowing it up. In fact, I heretically believe that, everybody says but stakes are higher in this election than ever. They're always higher than ever in every election. But if we don't fix the system, that we will never get some substantial change. So I think the whole discussion should be about how to destroy and replace the system we have now of oligarchy, because it's not a democracy anymore. It's an oligarchy.
Right.
I mean, that's not me saying it. That's political scientists
Paul
saying
Krugman
it.
says that.
That is the study by Gillens and Page at Princeton University.
Right.
It is an oligarchy. So first and foremost, we have to get rid of the oligarchy. That's the number one job. Until we do, we'll get kinder, gentler management of the oligarchy, or we'll get more brutal management of the oligarchy, but it will be an oligarchy and not a democracy. After that, if you don't agree with us on that, then we have an ideological difference. And instead of saying, we all need to unite together, we should say, no, but we have an ideological difference. You don't think we live in an oligarchy. You don't think the system needs to be blown up and replaced. I do. So I'm going to have that debate with you, even while you're telling me we need to unite. I'm going to say, no, the priority is to have that debate. Now, and beyond that, if you do agree with us that we have an oligarchy and a system that needs to be replaced, then the only discussion and debate we should be having among ourselves, those of us who agree, is what's the best tactic for blowing it up and getting rid of it. And anything you do that reinforces the oligarchy is harmful to humanity. Anything you do that erodes the oligarchy does a service to humanity. And then we're just talking about tactics. I mean, that's my take on it.
Well, one of the things I like to say to people, which I think is just a way more simplified version of what you just said.
Yeah,
when
I'm
people
not simplified.
Well, when people are like, Trump is so awful, we just need to unite because Trump's so awful, I'm like, okay, Trump is awful. Would you say at this point, the system that got us to this point, that got us to a Donald Trump presidency, would you say that's a point of crisis? Yeah, of course. I agree. That's a point of crisis. Well, guess what? When you reach a point of crisis, the first thing that has to happen to get out of that crisis, a status quo needs to shift, and shift big time. So how can you say we have to fight this while maintaining the status quo? It's not possible.
You mean, how do we fight Trump and maintain the status quo?
Yeah,
I
you
know.
can't do it. You can't do it. So when you say blue no matter who and stay with the party, that's not going to solve the problem. That's not going to solve the problem. It might give somebody that talks nicer in 4 years, but that's not going to solve the problem.
I agree. So to wrap up, Republicans and Democrats equally disgusted with their parties, but and you wonder why their only tactic left is voter shaming. If you want people to come vote for you, you have to offer them something. Hey, please make sure you subscribed, even if you think you are. You probably are. It only takes a second to check, and then click that bell to make sure you get a notice every time we drop a video. They won't tell you every time anyway, but it's the only thing we can do to fight back against the bastards. So please make sure you're subscribed and click that bell. And our next live show is July 15th in Chicago. And after that, July 27th in Burbank, California. Special guest on that show, Abby Martin. And if you could become a patron, that would be fantastic. We give you hours of bonus material every week. Thanks for your support.